What's up, everybody? Welcome in to the NBA Waiver Wire Show, baby. It is the end of week 3. We are officially on and popping in the fantasy season. We're doing a solo ride today, so no Erik today, just your boy Ethan. So I would appreciate if you guys got questions, please drop them in the chat, post a comment. We'll put them up on the screen. We'll answer it. I would appreciate it. They'll appear just like this. So I'm going to put it in the chat right now to drop your questions right here. All right, so drop your questions right now, right here. You get the idea. We'll put it up on the screen and then we'll go forward. For any questions, the most helpful way for me to answer to help guide you is also if you're looking for a waiver wire ad, which is the point of this show, right? Also give me your league construct, who you might be dropping, other guys that are available on the waiver wire, also very helpful. The more specific you can be, the better. And that way I can better guide you accordingly. But the end of week 3, some things remain the same. Some things stay different. One thing that remains the same, the Lakers stink. Unfortunately, looking like they were going to get win number 3 today. Turns out second half had different ideas. Lakers still stink, sitting on 2 wins. Warriors ain't a lot better. That's about all I got on that front. But so we start the show today, and because I'm doing it by myself, it will be a little bit shorter today. We're going to start the show. And I just figured we'd talk about guys now that we're a few weeks in who have kind of, outpaced their expectations a little bit, right? So these are guys who were probably ranked lower than they should have been, who have come out of the gates hot, right? I mean, guys like, Lauri Markkanen and Kelly Olynyk, those guys are kind of obvious, right? Kelly Olynyk, obviously, a waiver wire pickup for so many people. Lauri Markkanen, likely to have been drafted in your league. And if he wasn't, he should have been. Get yourself in a new league. But, I'm talking like the Bulls of the world. I'm talking the Isaiah Hartensteins of the world. I'm talking the Larry Nance Juniors of the world, guys like that. Larry Nance Jr. is a top 15 player in 9 cat leagues over the last week. Top 15 player. So I feel like sometimes we get in this trap of, I'm going to make this pickup. I got to keep this guy for X amount of time, right? Almost every fantasy team that I do for basketball almost always have a streaming spot. Right? Not because I say, I'm going to draft poorly or anything like that, but it just winds up how it goes. I like to take a chance at the end of the draft, maybe last round, second to last round, something like that. And if that becomes a streaming spot, it's more than okay with me because it allows me to be flexible on the waiver wire. And over 82 game season, when your lineups are not weekly or semi-weekly or anything like that, you have to be as focused as you can be on the waiver wire because one good ad can be the difference, especially if we're talking about head-to-head leagues. So league format is also helpful here, but as we move forward here, just another thing I want to point out over last week, Nick Claxton ranked before the season. Okay. The Yahoo default ranks had him out almost at the top 150, 142 overall, 6th overall over last week. I know 1 week is not 1 year, certainly not one whole fantasy basketball season, but it is a good place to be if you're a Claxton guy. And look, we talked about Claxton a lot last week. We also talked about Mitchell Robinson, so we'll talk about that too. All right, got a couple questions, so let's go. Let's go right away. We appreciate that. All right, Jamie or Jaime, please correct me. Whichever one is right is how I want to call you. All right. Do I see the Lakers organization start panicking and start trading like for a Miles Turner or Buddy Hield? I mean, look, this has sort of been the ongoing joke for a while now, right? Worst kept secret in basketball. The Lakers could use Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, right? The Pacers know that. I think we all know what we're going to do here. I said previously that I would give it till mid-November for a Westbrook trade. November 10th actually was my exact date, so that's coming up this week. It's November 6th. The Lakers do not find themselves in a great spot, but they also find themselves with really no trade assets. And so I just – if you're the Pacers or any other team, why are you backing down from both of those unprotected first-round picks? Because the Lakers are in a terrible spot. And so I feel like it's going to be a stalemate. I don't think they're going to panic. I don't think that Westbrook will be traded by my self-imposed deadline. I think that was a little advantageous on the projection. I do think if the Lakers get 20 games in and you're talking about 10 games, under 500 or something like that, or I guess that would be 10-10, right? So you can't do that. But if you're talking like, 8-12, I mean, even that is an upshot at this point. So we're talking about like 6-14. I mean, yeah, you want to see them do something, right? Look, bottom line is if Miles Turner and sorry, my cat is trying to jump on me while we're doing this, so a little split attention. If we see Miles Turner and Buddy Hield get traded, whether it's the Lakers or any other team, you're going to have guys behind them, Isaiah Jackson, Benedict Mathurin, guys like that, really step up and start to show out, right? Especially with Chris Duarte on the sidelines right now. That's the way it's going to go. Jaime, we're going to add you on because you started this question. You come back with another one. Should I add Suggs for Jalen Smith, Jabari, or Olynyk 12-team 9 cat? I'd like to see a little bit more from Jalen Suggs personally. Cole Anthony is not too far out from returning. Remember, Markelle Fultz is still also on that team. Remember, RJ Hampton, who I know they're super down on, is still on that team. Just too much there in that backcourt for me. I don't think Suggs does anything that's really going to be a difference maker for your fantasy squad in the long term. I don't feel like he's a must-add kind of player. Jalen Smith gets a lot more interesting when Miles Turner's not on the court. So if you have a positional need, then that could be okay. The other two guys I'd hold on to. I don't think Suggs has a ton of upside, but he has been playing a lot better. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be mistaken, and we'll see how it goes for Suggs. But right now, I don't think that, I try to really prioritize guys as like a must-have kind of player. But when you're talking about Suggs, he had the one game, he had the 26 and 9 assists, and that's what kind of made you turn your head and go, whoa, okay. The two games besides that have sandwiched that game in particular, he shot under 30% from the field in both games. He's made combined 1 3-pointer, 15 points. He's not really doing a whole lot defensively. He's turning the ball over a ton. So there's not a lot to love there. There's some intrigue, but there's not a lot to love. Good question. I appreciate that. Ro Claren, thanks for coming back, buddy. Appreciate you. Based on how poorly the Warriors and Poole have played, do you think Poole will still finish top 50 in 9-cat? Oh, man. I said to somebody recently this week, I said, the Warriors basically shelled out $300 million for Poole and Wiggins to secure their futures. And do you think there's anyone who's with the Golden State organization saying, maybe we shouldn't have done that? I mean, look. The good news is, even though the Warriors can't seem to win, we're on a 5-game losing streak. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't remember the last time we could say that. The Warriors are on a 5-game losing streak. And the teams they've lost to, Charlotte, Detroit, Miami, Orlando, the Pelicans. It's not exactly murderer's row when it comes to the opposition. So the Warriors have lost 5 straight. It's a weird thing that's going on with them. You love seeing that Jordan Poole had 20 points. You love seeing that he had 9 assists. They did rest some guys in that game, so he got a little bit more of an opportunity. But here's the concern, man. He shot 28%. 28% for Jordan Poole. And when you're a volume shooter like that, you need those percentages to at least be respectable if you're going to have any chance at a top 50 finish. I mean, you're talking about a guy who last year shot about 45% from the field overall, but shot 36.5% from deep. Right now, those numbers are down significantly. It's only about 41% from the field, about 31% behind the three-point line. His free throw percentage is down 10%. It's amazing what happens when you go from being an ancillary piece to a main part of the scouting report. And I'm not saying that's the only thing that's happened to Jordan Poole. There's a lot of things going on with the Warriors. It's just weird, for lack of a better word, at the moment. But top 50 might be a stretch for him. I mean, on the year right now, you're looking at a player who is outside the top 150. I mean, you're talking about a 9-cat, a guy who's sitting at 164 at the time of the show. That is not the player you drafted him to be. So I would really temper my expectations with Jordan Poole. Wow, my brain went to 15 years ago for a second there. I would really temper expectations with Jordan Poole. I'm not feeling super confident about anything Warriors related right now outside of Steph Curry. And, Draymond, as much as we love to hate on him, has actually had a pretty decent start to his season, even though he had the turmoil just beforehand. So I don't love the Golden State picture right now from fantasy value because there's just a lot of weirdness there. So, I don't know if he'll finish top 8 or top 50. I think it's going to be a challenge, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a challenge for him. So I wouldn't be opposed to selling high on Jordan Poole when that opportunity presents itself, especially if you can package him in he's the type of player for me where if you can put him in a 2-for-1 with another, quality player, but upgrade to, for sure top 50, even top 40 type of player, that's the kind of guy for me that's a no-brainer to do that. Okay. Hopefully that helps. Appreciate that question. Brooks, Jalen Smith, is he worth holding on to in a 12-team 9-cat head-to-head league? My most basic answer here is maybe, right? It's a maybe. It really depends on what's going on in your league, right? It depends what the waiver wire looks like. It depends on your positional needs. It depends on a lot of Smith. It depends on a lot of stuff. Guys, it's been a long weekend, so I'm a little tired. I do apologize, but I'm tripping over my words, all right? You look at Jalen Smith's last game, you want to throw it in the trash can, right? Scoreless, 1 rebound, 0 blocks, 3 turnovers. I mean, abysmal, right? Look at the game before that, 3 points, 4 rebounds, steal, a block, shot 25%. Game before that, shot 21.5%. At least he had 8 and 14. At least you could do something with that. The games prior to that were a lot better. It's also when Miles Turner was sitting on the sidelines. So if you picked up this player thinking he was going to be a long-term asset, especially with how he ended last year, I think you're a little disappointed, right? He's still over 70% owned in Yahoo leagues. I think that number is going to start changing. I think there are just too many other guys doing too many other interesting things in a little bit of a better spot to perform, right? He's one of those guys who you have a tough time cutting as a fantasy GM because you don't want to be the guy who cuts him right before he goes off, right? Like I've had this similar dilemma in fantasy football this year, right? I drafted Kareem Hunt one league. Kareem Hunt's been terrible, right? Any other name, you say, I'm gonna get rid of this guy. But you're holding on to that. I don't want to be the guy who cuts him before he pops off, right? I mean, I finally cut him this week, to be honest with you. So I mean, that's the type of sort of guidance I coach with myself with, that I would pass that same thing on to you, Brooks. So if you have a need at the big man position and it's thin on the wire, you might think about giving him another week, right? But if you have a priority ad who you can go get and you can turn into something greater, I think that's the play, right? Don't only pick up players to play them. Think of it as the asset. Play chess, not checkers. Hopefully that helps. Okay, I appreciate that, Brooks. Thank you very much. Questions have been great, guys. Please keep them coming. I want to get through as many as I can. And the time will be together today because it's really helpful for me, and I hope it's as helpful for you. All right, Jamie, Jaime, please make sure you tell me which way to pronounce your name because I want to make sure it's the right way. All right, I'm holding my first priority waiver spot. Oh boy, what kind of value player should I target? Wait with it. Well, there's one reason why I really prefer fab budget leagues because everybody has a chance at everybody, but also this waiver priority. You make one wrong step and you get sent to the back of the line. It's really tough to operate with. So, look, unless you have a striking need, right? Unless you have a huge injury and you need to fill a roster spot with somebody who's going to be at least give you something from that position, I think you can just hold it, right? Don't just pick up a guy to pick up a guy because eventually, and probably sooner rather than later, there's going to be somebody who everybody says, hey, don't walk, run to go pick this guy up, right? There's going to be Bol out there, right? There's going to be it's much lesser, but an Isaiah Hartenstein out there, right? There's going to be somebody who's going to have a clear path to opportunity, and you don't want to miss out on that. Now, remember that you got to be active on the waiver wire in order to make sure you secure that player, but you don't want to miss out on those opportunities. It's the optionality, right? It's the same idea as in the league when our draft picks are their most valuable actually before they're actualized, right? It's before they turn into a draft pick. We think of them as their highest value only when it becomes a chance at the unknown, right? On the minute it's actualized, it goes bye-bye. So if you go backwards, right, the Nets have just been in the news for a few reasons, right? But if you look at the Nets, right, this is a really good example for me. The Nets traded away all those picks to get an aged Kevin Garnett, a vintage Paul Pierce, and I use vintage with all the wrong, terminology right there, and an aged Jason Terry. It must have really pained them to watch the Celtics draft Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, right? Guys who are going to carry them for the next decade, no matter what route that team ultimately takes. That must have been painful. But when you trade back-end first-round picks and you see them become players like, we'll stick with the Celtics because they haven't exactly drafted great as much credit I want to give them. They haven't drafted great over the years. RJ Hunter, James Young, guys like that, right? Romeo Langford. Those you put those guys in the deal instead of the picks. You say, they didn't really get that much, right? It's the chance at a chance. It's why Sam Presti holds on to those picks. It's why Danny Ainge loves to collect those picks. It's the currency that's immeasurable. It's kind of like, crypto. When crypto was hot, nobody knew how to exactly put a handle on it, right? It's this hot thing that everybody wants until it becomes something, and then we're less excited by it, right? Oh, it's Jamie? Okay, Jamie. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that. All right, so hopefully that helps, man. If you give me a few names on your waiver wire, I can be a little bit more specific with my advice in terms of whether you should burn that first priority or not, but hopefully that helps in the interim. All right, Wayne. Welcome, Wayne. Thank you for coming on. And today is a free show, you guys. I didn't even mention this. We're like 15 minutes in. I didn't even mention this. It's a free show. I'm so glad to have you guys here with me. We do this every Sunday. Usually it's me and Eric. If you don't know Eric, you haven't been with SportsEthos Network, the Ethos Sports Network. We say it twice because we're so good. All right. You haven't been with us very long. Eric is the man, the myth, the legend. He's the rotomancer. He's the big baller. He's the shot caller. But right now he's in Thailand. So we're going to let him have that fun. You just get to be with me for this evening. So hopefully you enjoy that. A little bit of my baseball card collection right behind me here. Okay. We got a question from Wayne. Wayne, KCP was dropped. Is it time to drop Trey Murphy for him? Head-to-head 9-cat 12 team. You know what? It's very interesting you asked this question because I have Trey Murphy on a team as well. So I have a couple of bigger leagues is what I'll say. A couple of bigger investments, okay? Not crazy, but big enough, right? And Trey Murphy's been one of those guys who, even going back to last year, we're all like, man, why isn't this guy like a little bit hotter, right? Why aren't more people jumping on him? And we talked about the Pelicans' depth this year, and we said, Trey Murphy might slide down. All he's kind of done throughout the season, with the exception of, basically his last game is produce, okay? So over the last few games, basically since the calendar has turned to November, it's gotten a little less exciting. I mean, he's averaging 8 points a game, few rebounds, a steal, and basically a 3 a game, and he's not even shooting 50% from the field. So if you need to move on, I'm okay with that. right? The Pelicans are getting healthier. Herbert Jones is healthy. Brandon Ingram is healthy. Zion Williamson is healthy, right? CJ McCollum is healthy. There's only so many. I mean, as deep as they are, and I think a lot of these guys have real NBA talent. Like the Pelicans have built themselves a pretty solid NBA roster, but there's only so many shots to go around. And unless Trey Murphy has one of those nights where he's just electric from downtown, it's going to be hard for him to really pop off. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's had one game of more than 20 points this year, 2 games of more than 5 rebounds per game this year, 2 games where he's hit 4 or more threes, right? And he's only hit 4 in those 2 games. So he does things that we like. He does enough defensively to keep himself relevant, right? On the year so far, you're talking about a top 50 player, right? So it's kind of hard to say, well, we're just going to move on from him outright. You're talking about a guy who's a top 50 player on the year so far in 9 cat leagues. But then you try not to look at just what's happened in the past and you project forward, right? Because now the Pelicans are healthy, will he get the same opportunities? Now, in this case, we're talking very specifically about Caldwell Pope, right? Should I make the swap 1-for-1? Now, I don't know if people realize this, but KCP is a top 75 player this year, right? In the last few games, he's hitting the 3 ball. He's not scoring a ton. He's getting a handful of steals, right? He's not really lighting up the stat sheet. That's not what Kentavious Caldwell-Pope does. He just kind of solidly contributes across the board. Now, the most interesting thing to me about KCP this year so far is that he's shooting 48.5%, right? Do you think that number has the potential to stick at that high rate? Or do you think that's an outlier for a guy who's a 42.1% shooter for his career? He's shooting over 50% from behind the three-point line. It's a career 36.2% shooter, right? And despite all the success he's had from the field, he can't make a free throw to save his life right now. I mean, he's only getting there one time a game, so it doesn't really matter. But he's shooting sub 70% from the field. But with a steal and a half a game, 2.5 threes per game, while he's shooting 50% from the field and over 50% from the three-point line, I mean, you like that. You like that player, right? Those 4 steals, right? I mean, right, exactly. We like stuff like that. I mean, that's the type of production we look for. So, if it were me, and I'm looking forward, right, I'm actually willing to make that gamble, knowing that KCP's efficiency is going to drop down a little bit, but you haven't been having an efficient player with Trey Murphy. That's not why you rostered him. So I know his efficiency is going to drop down a little bit, but I'm okay with you making that move. I think KCP has a clearer path to what he does in Denver than what Trey Murphy offers in New Orleans, right? I think that's the best way I can say that. So hopefully that helps, Wayne. Appreciate that. Ro Claren is Conley a sell high. He's ranked 66 now with a solid 11.9, 2.1, 7.4. His last game when Sexton played 30 minutes was still very solid. I'm combining a bunch of those comments together for us. Yeah, I'd have no problem selling high on Conley. No problem selling high on Conley. I think especially if he remains with the Jazz as the season progresses, no matter what direction it goes, his minutes aren't going to go up. They're going to go down, right? So I got no problem. I think that's a perfect example of a guy to sell high on. And again, I love the bundle. I'm a big bundler. So I'd say the 2-for-1, kind of like American Pickers, if you're familiar with that reference, right? The bundle. So I would go 2-for-1. And, I don't think I personally would be surprised if he finishes a top 70, let alone top 75 player. Okay. So hopefully that helps. All right, Raymond. Welcome to the show. Look at you. You got an avatar picture and everything. Thank you, buddy. Fantasy outlook for Josh Hart and Jared Vanderbilt. Are we talking for the week? Are we talking for the year? Are we talking about for the next 5 years? No, I'm just kidding. Look, let's talk in the short term. In the short term, Jared Vanderbilt's not going to play against the Clippers. He is out tonight. He's got a groin injury. I love Vanderbilt, man. He's never going to blow you away on a stat sheet because he's not going to drop in 20 points. Probably not going to grab 20 rebounds. Probably not going to dish out 20 assists, right? Definitely not going to dish out 20 assists, okay? But you're talking about a guy who won the year, right? He's shooting 56% from the field, 9 points, 8 rebounds, a steal and a half a block, a few assists, right? This is a guy who's a very useful player. He reminds me of another guy right now who used to play in Utah, used to make a killing in Utah, named Andre Kirilenko. He just did a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. And he did it well enough where he was overall a pretty good asset for your team. You're talking Jared Vanderbilt is a top 80 player on the season so far in 9 cat leagues. Top 80, right? That's a pretty good player. That's a 6th, 7th round pick, which is probably a higher valuation than where you drafted him, right? Jared Vanderbilt, pre-ranked by Yahoo, default 143, current 81. Okay, when you have positive return on investments like that, it usually means good thing for your fantasy team. I like Jared Vanderbilt a lot. I think he's good. He has no problem remaining kind of exactly where he is for the entirety of the year. So if you're not looking to sell on Jared Vanderbilt, don't. I don't think you need to. I think he's going to stay right where he is. Josh Hart is he's similar, even though they play very different positions, right? He's kind of similar in the sense that he gets you some out of position stats, right? I mean, you're talking about a guy who has cracked the double-digit point barrier 3 times all year, but he's got 6 or more rebounds in every game he's played from the wing spot. His assists are way up. And I know Damian Lillard's been out, he's been hurt, but his assists are way up. I mean, in the last 5 games, he's got 6 assists, 4 assists, 4 assists, 6 assists, 8 assists. I mean, he's playmaking a little bit. He's doing enough defensively to keep himself relevant. I'd like to see him hit a few more threes. I mean, that's the reality. I'd like to see his shot go down a little bit more often. I'd like him to be a more efficient player, right? Right now, he's about a fringe 100 player, top 100 player. I think there is the potential for him to be a top 75 player, but I think it's a wide range. I could see him finishing anywhere from 75 to 125. So he has a spot on your fantasy team, but he should not be a key pillar of your lineup. So hopefully those 2 takes helped you out, Raymond. Appreciate that question. All right. Jamie, do you see DeAnthony Melton holding his recent performance value while Harden is out? Absolutely, baby. DeAnthony Melton is a great example of a guy who, if you had the first waiver priority and he was available, you should have went and picked him up. James Harden's going to be out for at least a month. And this is really important. Let's point of clarification. It's like Pascal Siakam going on the shelf today. They said the Raptors are going to reevaluate him in 2 weeks, right? Chris Boucher, who I picked up weeks ago, right when the season started. It's your time, baby. Okay? Pascal Siakam, we're going to reevaluate you in 2 weeks. It's not just he's back in 2 weeks. We'll see in 2 weeks. James Harden, who has a foot tendon injury, who pounds on that foot constantly when he plays basketball, when he walks, when he does anything, when he goes to take a shit, whatever it is, right? You're walking on the foot. You can't just stay off of it unless you're on crutches, basically. And even then, you're going to put your foot down at some point, right? Melton he's always been this kind of guy. He's always been somebody who's capable of producing, right? When given the opportunity in fantasy land. Is he a better player in fantasy than reality? That's up for debate. I think he's a strong defender, right? But is he a better player in fantasy than reality? Maybe it's equal, right? Look, you're talking about a player who's a top 80 player on the season, even though he had a slow start to the year, right? Top 80 on the season. We love that. Love that. He's still only owned in about 72% of leagues. So this is up 13% in the last day. So really, he was about halfway owned prior to this. But since he's been stepping into the limelight, I mean, you look at this. Yeah, I know he shot 22% from the field in this last game. Don't get me wrong. That ain't good. But 12 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks from a point guard? Are you kidding me? I mean, this is a guy who gets you those out of position defensive stats. That's what we love about Melton. He's not just a steal specialist. He can actually block a few shots too. Now, he ain't exactly racking them up over the year, okay? But in the steals category, since the beginning of the year, I mean, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 5, 1, 2, 0, 2. And the 0 is the game he didn't play in. So every game he's played, he's had at least 1 steal, right? He's hitting the 3 a little bit more now, right? He's not the world's worst shooter either. He's shooting about 44.5% from the field this year, okay? So, yeah, I think he can hold it, and I think you got to hold on to him. There's no reason to move on from DeAnthony Melton now or in the next, little bit here. All right. Wayne, you're welcome, buddy. All right, second question. Christian Colaco, 6 blocks today. I mean, I think this is a good example, right? When people go, whoa, this guy did what? Right? I mean, this guy who's rostered in 6% of Yahoo leagues, outside the top 300 for the year so far. So I don't think to say anyone could have expected this, projected this, missed me with that, right? He is a block specialist. I mean, he can block the shot, right? I mean, he hasn't eclipsed more than 23 minutes in any game this year prior to today, right? But he's blocked 1 shot in every game that he's been in except for 2, right? He has 1 game with 3 blocks prior to this where he played 21 minutes. And then today in 31 minutes, he blocked 6 shots. I'd like to see him do it again, right? I'd like to see him be that true block specialist because, look, when DeAndre Ayton went out, we talked about last week. If you were here last week, which I know a lot of you were not, but if we were here last week, and that's okay, right? Now that you're getting a sample, we bring you in, okay? We talked a lot about Bismack Biyombo stepping in for DeAndre Ayton when his ankle was injured. Well, he could block shots. Okay. So Biz in the last week has games of 5 blocks, 4 blocks, 2 blocks, and 3 blocks, even though he's barely playing any minutes, right? So even though he's that block specialist, I mean, he's literally averaging 2.3 a game. On the year, he's on the outer 150. The outer 150, okay? The outer 150. Make your own determination. So I would not burn a priority spot on him, but I keep my eye on him. I'd like to see him do it again. And if I miss out on him, that's okay. I'm okay with that, right? It's okay. You don't have to get on everybody. All right. No one waiver wire priority worthy, but who do I wait for throughout the year? What kind of player do I burn the spot on when the time comes? A league winner, man. A league winner. A guy who's going to have a clear runway to produce. I mean, we think about these types of guys closer to the trade deadline, right? Or when there's a trade, the immediate fallout, right? We know, like, so let's just say Russell Westbrook gets traded, right? And let's just say that it's the Pacers trade. And on the way back, it's Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, right? Okay. Well, Buddy Hield is probably going to take more 3-point shots. Is he going to score as much with the Lakers? Maybe, maybe not, right? But who are those secondary and tertiary impacted players, right? So Jalen Smith is a good example of this. We talked about him a lot today, right? He would have a clear runway with Isaiah Jackson in Indiana for the Pacers, right? You look from the Lakers side, you move Westbrook over there, you say, okay, maybe Westbrook actually becomes an interesting fantasy asset over there, right? Is that possible? Or have we all just said, no, no matter what, Westbrook's not going to be a fantasy asset for us this year? Because since he's moved to the bench, he's actually been pretty okay. The turnovers are way too high, right? I mean, way, way, way too high. He had 7 again today. You can't have 7 turnovers, especially off the bench. Sorry, you just can't. Okay. So in the last 3 games, Russell Westbrook's best for a cat league no matter what. Okay. But in the last 3 games, Russell Westbrook's turned the ball over 17 times. You can't do that in a league like this. But in those same 3 games, 32 points, plus 26, 58. So he's averaging like 19 points a game, just about, right? He's averaging like almost 5 rebounds a game, averaging 8 assists per game. I mean, it's a player, right? It's a player you could use, 2.3 threes per game. So you start thinking about those guys who are impacted by Russell Westbrook, exactly. You start thinking about those guys who are, not just the meat and the potatoes, but also the asparagus, the broccoli, the bok choy, the bean sprouts, whatever else you want to put on your plate, and how all those guys and what they can do to step into the limelight, right? So without really looking through your waiver wire, it's sort of the best specific general advice I could give you, but you're really looking for those high upside guys, right? Not guys who are just going to get their 20 minutes and that's it, and we're going to be done here, right? We want those high upside guys who are playing now and have a potential path to a lot more minutes in production in the future, right? Like Benedict Mathurin is a great example of this. Value now, and the sky's the limit if the runway's cleared for him. All right. Jeff, welcome in, buddy. We did talk about Jalen Smith a little bit ago, but I'll touch on him again. Really depends on your league, depends on your construct, depends on your needs. But right now, if you're just going on like, can I drop him for player X, Y, or Z? I don't really need him. I mean, yeah, like he's not really doing much right now, right? This is a player who I think, again, we get attached to this idea of value, right? It's like when we I'm big on trading cards, as you guys can see. It's like when we buy a card for $1 and we want to sell it for 10 and someone offers you 7. And you're like, I don't know. You bought it for $1, right? Like move on. Move on. So it's one of those things where don't get too attached to the value that he brought you last year because that's last year. Don't get too attached to what he's done in the past this year because it's in the past, right? We're looking about the future, right? We don't buy stocks because, it's done really well in the past, so I'm going to keep investing in that. Like, yeah, maybe for like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or, those stocks that are part of the, the 500 index, right? Those historically well-performing stocks. But you don't see a spike in a new stock and buy it high and then wait for it to fall and then say sell it, right? So it's just one of those things where I feel like people got to get more detached from the name and focus more on the numbers, right? Focus more on the numbers there. All right. We got a quick break in the questions, so let me just go over a couple quick things. All right, 8-cat, 9-cat are very different leagues. Roto, head-to-head, very different leagues. So keep that in mind as you're sort of roaming through your waiver wire and you're trying to decipher what's the best move forward for you here, because it's not just about what they've done; it's about what they're going to do for your team. What they've done does not help you. What they're going to do will help you. Okay, all right. Now you start looking at names like Yuta Watanabe, right? Like, are we really going to pick this player up? But I don't know. Are you? He's averaging, 1.7 blocks in his last 3 games. He's averaging over 10 points a game. He's averaging 5 boards per game, right? This is a usable player. Are people rushing out to waiver wire for him? Absolutely not. All right. Marcus Morris is a guy who probably should be rostered in more leagues, right? Especially with Kawhi Leonard. Absolutely. Nobody seems to know what's going on again, right? I mean, this is a guy who's literally rostered in closer to half of leagues than he is to all leagues. And this is a guy who's playing 35 plus minutes a game in the last 3 games. Clear path to playing time. They need his production. He should be on a team. It's that simple, man. And it fascinates me why folks don't gravitate toward those players who are producing, because our own implicit biases tell us, it won't be forever. You're right, it won't be. Okay. But for right now, it's working. Shout out to you, Bobo. I have to say this. Shout out to you, Bobo. I mean, this is a guy who, going back to his high school days, the knock on him was that he doesn't play hard. Motor's not there. Such a physical physical being, right? Such a freak of nature, for lack of a better way to say it, but doesn't use it, right? I don't like players like that. Sounds like Bull got the wind of that because as a starter, it's only been 2 games, but as a starter, 13.5 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks, shooting damn near 70% from the field, better than 80% from the free throw line. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This guy's a unicorn. Okay. And Bobo is the type of guy who, if we kind of were watching him now as this guy, kid in Europe who's a rookie, right? We're saying, look at this 22-year-old who can do this and this and this and that. Like, this is so interesting, right? He's been written off as a burnout in the NBA. The Pistons gave up on him. The Nuggets gave up on him. Any team could have had him. They didn't want him, right? Magic kind of fell ass backwards into him and said, all right, we'll give you a shot. They re-signed Mo Bamba. That's how confident they were about Bobo, okay? And Mo Bamba, he sucks. And Bull is looking like he could be like part of the future here, right? You got, Paolo Banchero is just, that dude is good, man. It's been a while since I've seen a rookie look that good with certain things. It's been a while. It's really cool to see. Okay. So Bull, shout out to you. I just had to make sure I got that in, but we had to break into questions. And good, Brooks, sell high on Bull, target somebody like Michael Porter Jr. inside the top 80 type. Yeah, man. Look, if you can get a top 80 player for Bull, I see no shame in that game, right? No shame. This is a player who literally before the year, nobody even gave a second thought to. He was ranked outside the top 400 by Yahoo to start the year. Over last week, he's the 14th ranked player in 9-cat. I personally am not a huge MPJ guy. I have said for a long time now, that I thought Michael Porter Jr. would always be more valuable to the Nuggets in a trade than he would be in reality. There are games, like the game he had against Utah, where he went for 22 and 13 with 4 threes, where you go, okay, I like that. And then there are other games like the ones he's had recently, most 2 recent games, versus OKC and San Antonio. He's playing okay. There's nothing wrong with it. 13 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, 3 threes, but that's it. He gives you nothing defensively. He doesn't pass the ball at all, does nothing for assists, doesn't block shots, right? What is he elite at? I want fantasy players who are elite at things. I want you to be an elite shot blocker, an elite shooter, an elite scorer, elite passer, elite rebounder. Michael Porter Jr. is none of those things. He's none of those things. So I get the idea. He's still a top 50 player for the year, right? I know I'm a little more sour on him than most people. But yeah, if you can get, if you can get Michael Porter Jr. for Bull, I think just about everybody would sign off on that, right? But right now, I'm a little interested to see where this Bull experiment goes, especially because of the positional scarcity, right? Bull, big man. Always a little bit more for me. Jamie, Kristaps has had some high and low games. Well, if that ain't the story of his career, I don't know what is. Where do you see his value favored towards that high end side or in the middle? So basically, where do you see Porzingis landing, right? So I had a tweet the other day and I said, Lauri Markkanen is playing like Kristaps Porzingis card collectors wish he would, right? Markkanen is balling. It is crazy how good he's playing. And obviously seeing him most recently against the Lakers, like I really had an opportunity to watch him. These aren't just numbers he's putting up. He's playing well, right? This is a dude who, Lauri Markkanen is literally averaging 22 and 10 with better than 50% from the field, 2 threes per game, and almost a block per night. He's a top 20 player in 9-cat on the year. He's a top 100 player, ranked overall for the season coming into the year. A top 20 player, Lauri Markkanen? Are you kidding me? I don't think even Lauri Markkanen could have predicted that, right? He feasted on the Lakers, 27 and 13. He was killer out there. And even his he's had 2 bad games this year. And in both of them, weirdly, he had 14 points and either 6 rebounds or 7 rebounds. Lauri Markkanen has as many games at under 15 points as he does over 30 points. It's crazy. Okay, so to go back to Porzingis. With Porzingis, it's always, my concern with him is what's going to be next? What's going to happen? Are we waiting for another injury, right? There's all these things. It's kind of like, when is the bottom going to drop out? Okay. But for the season so far, he's been pretty decent overall. You're talking about a top 25 player. He's shooting 50% from the field, over 80% from the free throw line, a couple of threes a game, 20 points, 9 rebounds, a block per game. He's not that far off of Lauri Markkanen, right? He's playing pretty decently. So as long as he can stay healthy, I expect him to be, pretty favorable. Like he should be a top 40 player, right? I mean, he has the skill set to be that. He has the opportunity in DC. It's there for him. It's a question of health for me, right? How much do you trust his health? And if you don't want to give yourself that headache, it's why some people don't draft Anthony Davis because they don't want to deal with the health headache. Okay. So if you don't want to deal with that, I get it. But I mean, I see no reason why he can't be a top 50 player with health cooperating. This is a guy who's got the skill set. He scores, he can shoot the three, he can block shots, he can get rebounds, right? These are the kinds of players we love in fantasy basketball. All right. Is Jalen Green a buy low? He's currently ranked outside the top 120. What do you see as rest of season fantasy value? So Jalen Green is a guy who I took a chance on in one of these two big money leagues I was talking about. Okay. And not because I was necessarily targeting Jalen Green, it just kind of happened that way. Right. In 9-cat leagues for the season, he's not even outside the top 120. He's outside the top 175. That's kind of crazy for a player who's averaging 20 points a game. But the reason he's so low is because for fantasy, again, it's not just about scoring. If you build a team around points, you will build a losing team. It's important to have guys who score. But if you build a team around volume shooters who all they do is score, you're not going to win those other categories. So you look at Jalen Green, right? The only thing that's really changed from last season to this year and why he's taking that step back in the efficiency overall from the field is because he's taking more shots. He's taking about 4 more shots a game, right? He's only making about 1 more. So it's not perfect. His three-point shot is actually about the same, right? About 35%, 34.3% as a rookie. Free throw percentage about the same. 80 last year, 77 this year. Rebounds are slightly up. Assists are about the same. Steals are about the same. Blocks are the same. So what's changed? Not a whole lot. He's just not an efficient shooter at this stage in his career. And the question is whether he will ever be, right? Now, he has 3 games this year, 1, 2, 3, that he has shot it over 50% from the field. He has 3 games this year where he shot it below 30% from the field. So when you're clocking in with as a volume shooter, I mean, this is a guy who's taking 18 shots a game. You're shooting 37.5%. It's not going to happen for you, especially whether it's head-to-head or roto. Head-to-head might be a little bit easier to swallow because at least you can balance it out on a weekly basis. But roto, I mean, it's a category killer. So I don't really know in terms of buy low, like did someone cut him? Are you trading your end of bench player for him, right? Do you need points? If you need points and you can get him for nothing, sure, right? Am I trading somebody who's in the top 75 to grab him? Like, I'll trade you Josh Hart for Jalen Green. Sure, I'll do that. So if you can do something like that, absolutely. But if you got to trade somebody of real value just to fill a points hole, well, points might be one of the easiest things to find on the wire, right? So I'm not prioritizing the pickup, okay? I'm not prioritizing, I shouldn't say the pickup, but I'm not prioritizing really seeking him out and like going forward and saying, I must have this player. Hopefully that helps. All right, Beans. Are you buying into Patrick Williams? Can he carve out a role that would be useful in fantasy? Poor shooting night, but the blocks have been there. Well, I got 2 answers for you. One is I've always liked Patrick Williams. I think he's a player. Part of my card collection hopes that he bounces back a little bit. The shooting has never really been his what we'll call a forte, right? I mean, he's never been one of those guys who's like, oh, he shoots 70% from the field, right? He was pretty decent as a rookie, right? He shot almost 50% from the field. Then in sophomore season, all of a sudden, the shot kind of came back, right? Or really came up, I should say. Shot better for 50% from the three. Wasn't taking a ton of them. And this year, it's been not so great. But weirdly, again, even though he's taking a big step back from 3 and a slight step back overall, his free throw shooting is through the roof. At the end of the day, you're not drafting Patrick Williams to be a shooter. You're drafting him for the peripherals, right? So do I think the opportunity can be there? Absolutely, right? You draft him for the defensive stats, for a couple of threes. You see what else goes, okay? On the season, you're talking about a guy who's barely in the top 200. So is he a priority ad? No. But is he someone who's I'm keeping my eye on? Absolutely, right? And I think this is one of those things where the Bulls they don't seem to have that same magic that they had last year, right? I made myself, I don't want to say a very rich man, but a rich enough man saying the Bulls were going to be better than they were last year. But I don't see it this year. There's some weird stuff going on there. It's still a weird year in the NBA so far in general, I feel like. There's a lot of pseudo storylines, a lot of guys, teams who are weird constructs. I would not be surprised to see a really active trade deadline and long before it too, right? By the way, just shout out to all you guys for all these questions. These are awesome. This is what I hope to have every week, just rapid fire. Boom, 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 boom. I know it's tough to wait a whole week to answer your questions. I know I wish we could do this every day, but, until you guys, jump on that premium sub train every day and really use it, we're going to do this once a week, man. But I love interacting with you guys. And just as a reminder, I don't know if you guys know, but on the bottom of the screen, so you'll see it right here, right there. You got my name, but you got my Twitter handle. You can always tweet me too if you got questions. I have more time these days on the work front than I had once upon a time, so it's been nice to have that little bit of a reset. And we're gonna see what the future holds exactly, but I'd be happy to interact with you guys a little bit more in the interim and hopefully get some of your questions answered. I know a lot of these things are time sensitive. Ooh, Jed. Jed, I recognize your name, man. Hope everything is well. Think you were with us a couple seasons ago too. So I know we took a little bit of a sojourn from our video last year. COVID really messed everybody up, man. You know, it's been a long few years, but the good news is I haven't aged too much. I'd like to think. All right, baby. All right. So Jed asked, how would you rank Boucher, Hartenstein, and Aldama as waiver bigs? Well, got three very different players there. So let's talk about them. All right. So I remember watching the I think it was the first game of the Grizzlies season. Maybe it was the second game. It was a game against the Knicks. Okay. I think it was opening night. And Santi went for 18 and 11. My best friend texted me. He goes, "Who is Santi Aldama?" He goes, "It sounds like a Peruvian food dish." And I said, "Yeah, it does. Little lomo saltado, little Santi Aldama. We got ourselves a winner here, right?" The minutes have gone down from where they were. So up until about Halloween, he was averaging, about 30 a night, right? Give or take a few. And they've ticked back some in the last few. So that's something to watch for me. Again, there's not one particular thing where I look at and go, I got to have this guy on my team for this very specific reason. Okay. The other names you mentioned here, Boucher and Hartenstein, we'll get to in just a second. I'm going to go sort of in reverse order, I think. Excuse me. So Hartenstein, excuse me, got to pronounce that in there, is a top 70 player on the year. And this is, including when Mitchell Robinson has been available. So now that Mitch Rob is off the court in, we'll call it a week and a half, but I'm going to say indefinitely. Yeah, I like Hartenstein a lot, man. I mean, he scores, he can rebound, he can block shots, he can hit the three more than what he showed. And I just think he's really just an interesting guy. I mean, the Knicks play 4 times this week. So I think Hartenstein is a must grab, right? I'm surprised he's floating on waiver wires. Talk about Chris Boucher. Bobby Boucher, okay? This is a guy who I picked up while he was still riding the bench. I said, man, did I just overlook him? Like, kind of fell out of favor. Like, what exactly is going on with Chris Boucher? And, sure enough, it's been one of those things where he's, he re-signed with the Raptors, but then he kind of fell out of favor. And it's been hard to figure out what exactly is going on. So on November 2nd, when they played the Spurs, then they beat the Spurs by almost 50 points, right? Boucher had a nice game, 3 threes, 17 points, 8 rebounds, 2 steals, a block, but it's a 43-point win. Show me a little more than that, right? He comes back the next game in a 1-point loss, 30 minutes, 17 points, 9 rebounds, a block, a couple threes. Today, right, in a win versus Chicago, 22 minutes, 8 points, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks, a steal. I like Chris Boucher. We know he can do the things that we like in fantasy. He can steal the ball, he can block shots, he can hit the three, all from the big man position. So if I had to rank those 3, I'd go in that order. Boucher, Hartenstein, Aldama, just like you have them. Hopefully that helps. Appreciate it, Jed. That's really, really a good question. Jay, what's your stance on Kyrie? Somebody offered me FVV for him, and I have no idea what to do with him. 12-team, 9-cat. I don't think anyone has anything to do with Kyrie, to be honest with you, Jay. Dude, I'll tell you, man, my personal stance is I took a piece of Kyrie art off my wall this week. I'll tell you that much. So that's kind of where I'm at with Kyrie personally. For fantasy, man, I wouldn't have touched him with a 10-foot pole. How confident do you feel? I mean, the Nets won 2 games back-to-back for the first time all season without Kyrie Irving on the court. Kyrie has now missed more games in his Brooklyn career than he's played for them. And it's really some amazing stuff. Van Vliet on the year is a top 20 player in 9-cat leagues. He's not doing it because he's scoring the ball a ton, but he's dishing the rock. He's getting steals. He's hitting threes. So I know he's coming off of, or he just had a 30-point game, 30 and 11 with no Siakam. I'd be really tempted to take that deal, man. I really would, especially with Siakam out for the indefinite future. I'd be really tempted to take that deal. Kyrie, yeah, I mean, he's been a top 10 player when he's on the court, but I have no idea what to expect from him. I have no idea what his future holds. I have no idea how many games he's going to miss. I think he'll miss more than 5, the 5 that were mandated for sure. I have no idea what to do with him. If you're feeling really lucky, I might try to squeeze a little bit more out, just FEV, and maybe some sort of late round piece. maybe a bowl, nice little waiver wire pickup that you can throw in there. But outside of that, man, that's so tough, man. I feel like I'd be tempted to take that just to rid myself of the headache. That's a really good question. Jamie, I have both Kyrie and Kawhi. Oh my God, who both fitly strong my category makeup. Do you suggest I trade and downgrade them? I mean, you can't trade Kawhi for a bag of chips, bud. So I don't know what you're gonna do with that. Kyrie, I mean, you could try, but it's at least it's not an injury, I guess. It's not that it's better. I'm so sorry, man. I mean, in one league, look, I had first overall pick. I took Jokic first on the way back on the swing. I took Kawhi instead of Zion. I'm in it too, man. I had faith, and I shouldn't have. That's the shortest version of the story, you know. Thanks, Jed. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I'm glad to hear things have been good, and we're glad to be back, man. This week is free. Normally it's for premium subs, so hopefully we can get you all on that train and we can get you guys rolling in here pretty frequently. I do like doing the video stuff. I think, we got a good rapport. We're a pretty good connection here. I like doing the video hits. If you like the video hits, if you like me in them, give the feedback, Dan Vesperis. Shout him out on Twitter and say, hey, get Norof on more videos. I hit you with the breaking news, instant analysis, all that sort of stuff. It's like Shams Charania, but Ethan Norof, so it's even better. Jed, we did talk about Trey Murphy a little bit before. A 12-team guy head-to-head leagues with healthy in New Orleans. I think you can move on if you want to. Jamie said he has a bigs-based team. They are guard and small forward eligible in trade with Kyrie and Kawhi. I mean, honestly, man, like I said, I don't think you could really trade Kawhi for anything right now. Kyrie in an FVV and bowl type of deal. I mean, I think there's something to be said for that, and I appreciate that question. I think that was Jay who had that question, right? So that was really helpful. So I go for something like that. All right, same question about holding Nance on the healthy pelts. Jed, thank you for bringing up Larry Nance, because this is a player who I did want to touch on, and I know I was going to cut it shorter today, but it's already been 45 minutes, man. So we're gonna try to end with some furious focus here. Nance, a player who on the year, right, just outside the top 100. But in the last handful of games, he had that 20-point game where people kind of like, oh, okay. The last 4 games, he scored in double digits in 3 of the 4. He's got at least 8 rebounds in 3 of the 4. He's got multiple steals in 2 of the 4. And he's got a couple of blocks along the way, all while shooting at least 60% in every game, 62.5% every game. So if you need a big man who can help you in the field goal percentage, who's going to grab a few rebounds, score a few points, and we'll see what else he can give you, sure. Is he, a guy that I'm rushing out and saying I must have this guy on my team? Probably not, but in the last week or so, he's been a useful player. I have him on a team, and I think he does deserve to be rostered in more than a third of leagues. The Pelicans play 4 times this week, it looks like. So versus the Pacers, probably a decent matchup for him. The Bulls should be a decent matchup. The Blazers might be a little bit of a tricky matchup, and the Rockets might be a little bit of a tricky matchup. But as long as he's playing 27 plus minutes a night in that 27 to 31 range, there should be room for him to produce. Okay. All right. This might be the last one. Roe Claren, how concerned should we be about Jonas Valanciunas, especially since Larry Nance Jr. has been an uptick in the minutes over the last game? Thoughts on his rest of season fantasy value? 9 cat, top 70, top 80, or what is the story as my cat absolutely destroys my leather chair over there? So on the season, Valanciunas still a top 75 player. I mean, you're talking about a guy who, last game had 13 and 17. He played 26 minutes. So, you like to see that after a 19-minute effort against Golden State. Team doesn't like to play big too much. Same thing against the Lakers. Team doesn't like to play big too much. The Clippers, they play smaller a lot of times when Zubac's off the floor. So, this is a little bit of a product of circumstance with Valanciunas. I'm not super worried about him. I mean, this guy who preseason, ranked basically top 60 player, clocking about top 75 player right now. I think 60 to 80 is a comfortable range for him. Even if he goes 90 at one point, you're still going to be in that window of opportunity. So I'm not panicking on Valanciunas, but I'm certainly keeping my eye on that situation. Okay, good question there. And that's the thing, guys. You always got to be thinking about who else in the picture, who's riding hot, how coaching styles go, individual matchups. I mean, there's so much more that goes into it than just, this guy did this thing in the box score and therefore he's this, right? There's all these specific elements that go into it. I mean, even in the DFS landscape, sometimes you can have guys who are saying, oh, okay, it's a good matchup. They're ranked 27th against shooting guards. Okay, is that because they're excellent defensively against shooting guards, or have they just faced poor shooting guards? Has it been coincidence? Like, there are all these factors that go sort of beyond the box score, right? BBS, beyond the box score. All right, last one's going to be from Jed. Jed, know you about to head out, but curious on your thoughts about Suggs. He's had good games, but killing my free throw percentage. Yeah, we talked a little bit about Suggs earlier, man. I mean, he's not a guy who I really need to rush out and go get. His field goal percentage is not good. His free throw percentage, you just don't get it. I mean, this guy who's had 2 20-plus point games the entire year. He was a DNP coach's decision for several of them. There's just too much noise in that backcourt for me. There's just too. He's not the best. He's not even the best option in the backcourt for that team, let alone the best player on his own team. So it's weird, man. It's weird. Okay. He doesn't. I mean, Jalen Suggs. I mean, if you're worried about free throw percentage, it's also not something I'd be terribly worried about. He had one game where he was 6-11 from the free throw line, but outside of that, it's been fine. I mean, he takes like 2 or 3 free throws a game. So it's really just that one game. And given what he did across the stat sheet otherwise, 26 with 9 assists and 4 steals, 2 threes, you kind of just swallow that one, So, Scott, I hear you, buddy. Markelle Fultz is sitting down. I hear you, man. Cole Anthony is on his way back. But I'm not talking about for just the next 2 weeks. I'm talking about indefinitely. So I appreciate that feedback, but that's where I'm at on that. All right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. It is time for me to wrap up this shop. Thank you for stopping by the NBA Waiver Wire Show. This is a free edition this week. Next week, we will return to the premium format. Hopefully, you guys get those subs in because, look, you get this and so much more. Shout out to the brew man, Aaron Brewski, the chief of the tribe. Shout out to Dan Besperis, and most importantly, shout out to all of you. Be back next week, Eric and myself. And next week, we'll get farmers market recommendations. I appreciate you, man. I will definitely be back, the fruit of the week and all that sort of stuff. I used to bring that up too. So bring that back to the table. All right, guys, have a good night and hopefully a good start to your week. And until then, we out.